Hey guys, it's Sam for Rizom-Lab, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at multiple UV sets and partial exports. So let's shoot on over to RizomUV and take a look. Okay, so we've got a completely empty scene here, so let's load some geometry. So let's load with UVs, and there will be no UVs. I'm going to merge by UV set name and load. And it's really simple. We've got a cube and we've got a sphere. And if we have a look at the multi-UV sets on the right here, just press that. You can see we just got a default UV set for both of these objects. We're going to change that, so let's get started and make some cuts. So with this cube, let's just unfold this in the normal way. Make cuts there. I'm also going to make a cut there. And the same the other side as well. And we also want a cut here and a cut here. Now this should give us a cross-like shape, so I'm going to press C for cut. You can see the edges have turned yellow, orange even. And what I'm going to do in this view is change these to flats. So you've got the option of viewing both, so that means both 3Ds and flats. And if you turn to 3Ds, you can see that they're still visible. But if I go to flats, everything disappears because nothing has been unfolded or flattened out yet. And we can press F to focus on the UV tile, and there's nothing in there. So I'm going to press U with my cursor hovering over the box. You can see something's happened there, and I'm going to press P to pack. Now, if I go back to both and zoom out again, where is it? You can see our sphere hasn't moved at all. But if I were to pack in this state, the sphere would disappear. And if I were to focus on the UV, even though this hasn't been cut or unfolded, it is still getting packed. So I'm going to undo that so it's back in its original place as a sort of, and go back to flats. Press pack again. And then go back to both, and you can see that it stayed where it was. So when you're in this flat state, you don't get any movement of those objects when packed. Now you can see this isn't quite straight, so what I'm going to do is change the global initial orientation to V and pack again, and now it's nice and straight. And we're going to call this UV set. We're going to rename this, and we're going to call it cube. Okay, so now we've got our cube unfolded and our sphere is still in its 3D state, not unfolded, not packed. For all intents and purposes, it is not part of this UV. So let's make another UV set. So I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to call this sphere and press OK. And now we're going to flip over to it by double clicking on it. As you can see, if we zoom out a little bit, we have our sphere and our box. And if I change this one over to flats, you notice that this is on both now. If I flip back to the cube, it's remembered this setting of flats here. But if I go over to the sphere UV set, it's back to both. So let's set this to flats. And this time, instead of unwrapping this cube, we're just going to unwrap the sphere. So I'm going to double click on this edge and add this edge and this edge. And in fact, I'm going to isolate this so it's easier to get around it. I'm going to do the same at the bottom here. Flip round to this side and do the same. And here as well. And all the way around to here. And that should be everything. So I'm going to press C to make those cuts. And then I'm going to go into island mode and select everything. Let's make sure we've got everything around the other side. And now we've missed one. there's a reason for this. If I try and grab everything like this, look around the other side and it will have missed that. So what I'm going to do is go to select, go to raycasting, and I'm going to say raycasting disabled. So now it should choose the back faces of anything around the other side. So now I'm going to unfold. So you can see it's appeared now because these are now flats. And I'm going to pack. And after I've packed, in this view, I'm going to hit the F key to focus, and we focused on these. Now you can see these are a little bit all over the place as well. So I'm actually going to change the initial orientation globally to V and then repack. Now everything's lined up a little bit more nicely now. In this view, I'm going to press I to unisolate. So now we've got our objects back. So now we've got two UV sets, one being the cube and one being the sphere. So let's export this. Now I could just hit save, and if I do that, it'll overwrite my original file. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to save as a new version of this. I'm going to browse and I'm going to create a new FBX right next to this. And I'm going to call this Cube Sphere, and I'm going to call it Unwrapped. We're going to leave everything at default for now and just hit save. It'll tell us it's saving at the bottom there. So that's saved, and I actually don't want to lose the state that I've got here, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to open another iteration of RizomUV. So let's open this again. And load that file that we just created. Now, as you can see, something's a little bit different from, our other RizomUV that we've got open. So let's go back to this one. Something's happened. Let's open our UV sets. In the cube UV set, which we're already in, the sphere has now got stretching. It appears something has happened to this. Let's have a look at the sphere. And the same thing has happened to our cube as well. And what's happened is that this sphere that was in this position, its sort of projection has almost been crushed down flat as we've exported it. And we can tell that it's been crushed down flat because if we go back up here, you can see this is set to both at the moment. But if I set it to flats, this is still here. So this has obviously been flattened in the UV space, and the same for this cube. If we flip over to our sphere UV set, this cube has been flattened down as well. So let's go to flats here. So this is not good, and it's not what we wanted, because this is now, it exists in our UV space and our UV set, and the same for this sphere as well. And there's a good reason for that, and there's something we can do about it. So I'm actually done with this now. I just wanted to show you that this is the state of that exported FBX. So I'm going to close this iteration of RizomUV and go back to this. And there's a way that we can actually prevent this from happening. We can go up to Edit, Preferences dialog, and if we scooch all the way down to the bottom here into the Import Export, we have an option for Enable Partial UV Sets. And I'm going to turn that on and close this. And then again, I'm going to go to File, Save As, and you'll notice now that in these options, Partial UV Sets is now on. So this setting here is exactly the same as the setting that we found in the Preferences dialog. And in fact, if I turn this off here, you'll see that it gets turned off here as well. If I turn it on here, it's on here. These are the same settings, they're shared. So I'm going to actually overwrite the FBX that I did earlier, the cube sphere unwrapped, with this partial UV set now enabled, and we'll hit save. So let's reload this file now. Load with UVs. Don't want to save my changes. Let's reload this. Load. And as is evident, this is not suffering from the same stretching problem now. And if we zoom out so we can see our sphere, there it is in all its glory. If we switch over to flats now, the sphere is no longer present. It hasn't been crushed down, and that's why it doesn't have that stretching. So let's take a look at this file that we've just exported now in our 3D program. Now, I use Cinema 4D, and I'm sure this is very similar in other 3D programs, but I just want to show you something that is another issue that we can solve. So here I'm going to say File, Merge Objects, go to our model that I exported, and just import this. And let's go to our UV edit view. Right, so I'm going to deselect everything. Now in Cinema 4D, you have something called UV tags. And in this, our cube UV set contains information about just our cube, and our sphere UV set, if I go to flats, contains just information about our sphere. But when we open this FBX in Cinema 4D or any other 3D program for that matter, you'll see the cube has got two UV tags. So let's select the first one, and this is the correct one. This is what we wanted for our cube. So on our cube, we've got this first tag, and it's called cube, and it contains our UVs for our unfolded cube. The second tag is called sphere, and you can see there's no information in the UV space. And if I zoom right out as well, there's no information at all there. So this is a UV set that is, well, a UV tag that is completely empty and therefore redundant. We don't want this sphere UV tag on our cube. And similarly, if we go to our sphere and select the first tag, we've got a tag called cube. That is completely empty. Got nothing in it. And the second tag is called sphere, and it contains information about our sphere. So these UV tags that don't belong on the object, so sphere certainly doesn't need the cube UV tag on it. It's utterly pointless because it's empty and it does not need to be there. But this is something that we can also fix in RizomUV too. So let's close this because we'll be loading again. We don't want to save changes to that. Let's go back to RizomUV and go back to our preferences again. And we have another setting. And it says this setting is FBX delete unused UV sets. So it's basically saying if you've got a set that's empty on an object, get rid of it. There's no point. So I'm going to enable that. And then I'm going to save as again and overwrite this FBX. And you can see that in these settings as well, that they're shared and this is now enabled. So let's save this, go back to Cinema 4D, import our FBX. So OK that. And now you can see that we've got one UV tag on our cube, and that is indeed called cube, and it's got information about our cube. And we've got one UV tag on our sphere. It's called sphere and contains information about our sphere. So that was a few settings that I just wanted to go over in RizomUV concerning multiple UV sets, partial export, and also deleting unused UVs, UV sets. I hope that was useful to you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and click on the bell to be notified of new tutorials. You can check out some of the videos on screen now, and you can also visit us on our website, across social media and our Discord server. Cheers guys, bye.